Ladies and gents, about time I bring you Shadowmoon Valley, finally up from the dead, back from the grave. Blizzard has let us in there. I've just 100%ed the zone. Obviously, it's far more than is needed to gain your levels there, which will be about 92 before most of you power levelers move on. But I have 100%ed it. Did everything, all the side quests, found as many rares as possible, all the mini quests, all the little doodads, I'll go and do that. So it's fair amount of time to give you my opinion on it. It's actually a very complete zone. The only thing missing is the very final quest, which is the bit after you assault Karabor. We are unlocking our major city here. We are going into Karabor and taking the Black Temple, or Karabor as it's known in Draenor, and making it our little home and preventing people like Ner'zhul from doing their dirty business, which is very cool. So, what I can say is I had love and hate and love of this zone over and over and over and over again. A fucking roller coaster of emotions throughout the entire day. And I can say with a hand on heart, that is more emotion than I felt for any Mists of Pandaria zone. So in that respect, this zone is a success. An absolute success. So we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Give you a nice overview. Various areas shown in the background. I will avoid the major story quests because they're awesome. They're absolutely awesome. So we will start with the good. One, the Alliance story absolutely craps on the Horde story in comparison to Frostfire Ridge. We will be doing some comparisons more towards the end. But the main Alliance story that unfolds throughout the Shadowmoon Valley, which eventually leads us to taking on the Horde forces at Karabor, is in fact fan-fucking-tastic. It's so well done. It's so interesting. It's a loregasm from start to finish. You'll be fighting alongside various characters and obviously coming up to meet Grommash Hellscream at some points and Ner'zhul. All those kind of big boys are floating around in there and it's glorious. Absolutely glorious. The other pros. We'll do the pros first. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It is a stunning zone, especially, again, in comparison to Frostfire Ridge, which is very sparse. I actually enjoy the sparseness and the harshness of the Frostfire Ridge. But for Alliance, it's a wonderful place to start. It's comforting, it's warm. It's very much saying, you know what? Yeah, you had all the Mists of Pandaria jungles and all that kind of weirdness that was kind of away from the traditional Alliance sort of area. Let's throw you back into it. It's very Ashenvale. It's got that wonderful tree-like feeling to it. Everything you see you recognize. It also mixes in various other aspects of the Draenei, obviously playing a big role here. Duh. And you'll see buildings that remind you very much of like the Exodar and all that kind of stuff going on. So in that respect, very, very fucking beautiful. Really beautiful zone. Absolutely loved that aspect of it as well. Let's move on to the meh before we do the bad. The meh stuff. Efficiency. Efficiency is kind of important because at some point the glare and lust and the glamour of the zone will wear off. This is going to be a zone we're revisiting. There are many level 100 zones inside of Shadowmoon Valley. These are things we're obviously going to be doing at end level. They remind me very much of the Argent Tournament grounds. There's islands and stuff to the south which are all level 100 places. There's going to be this kind of thing going on. So the meh side of it is it's really inefficient. Really inefficient in comparison to Frostfire Ridge. Very inefficient. Frostfire Ridge's openness actually allows for very nice, smooth leveling and getting from place to place. Remember, we can't fly, although I did get the bug, as I'm sure you guys have seen the video. You cannot fly in these zones. So efficiency is going to become kind of important later on, unless flight points quite literally take you to the exact place you need. Yeah? This place is much more hilly. Lots more nooks and crannies. Going down off the side of cliffs to rounds of beaches, you're going to run into that age-old problem that many of us haven't had to deal with for a very long time, which is we just can't get off a cliff. Usually we fly to the bottom. Can't do that anymore. Got to find a ground path round. That's going to happen to you a hell of a lot while leveling here. This does mean, in my opinion, the Horde is going to have a significant advantage getting to those first early levels and making it into the mixed zone, which is Gorgrond. They're going to be hitting 92 much faster than the Alliance, especially if you haven't got any practice. Simply because the layout of the zone is far more intricate. Far more intricate. You're going to be riding around mountains. You're going to be going up cliffs, down cliffs, into caves, back out, back around the mountains to get where you need to go. There's around 5 or 6 flight points in the zone. But of course, our quest areas aren't exactly on top of the flight points in most cases. They're really, really not. So that's something to not worry about. We'll obviously get past it. I'm kind of a little bit concerned towards endgame when we're going to be revisiting this zone a lot. This is where our kind of big city is. So we have to bear in mind that an inefficient zone could be a pain in the ass. If you think about even normal stuff like herbing, how much of an issue that will be, I don't know. All I'm here to tell you is it's far less efficient in terms of moving around and getting your quests done and getting back to turn them in. Your garrison, obviously this follows a similar format, but not exactly to the Horde, is that as soon as you get there, you're going to set up your garrison. That's going to be your base of operations. Your garrison's location is considerably worse than the Horde one. I found myself actually checking the map to get back to it. I never had to do that with the Horde one, which is on a nice, obvious, not too high cliff. It's much larger. I assume the Alliance one is going to unlock areas. The Alliance garrison area is considerably smaller than the Horde one. I assume that's going to expand. If it doesn't, it wouldn't make any sense. So we can almost take it as a given that the Alliance one will unlock new plots of land to build your garrison in. But its actual physical location on the map, I did find to be a little bit of an annoyance. Flight points will probably solve that for us as endgame. It's just something that you need to be aware of. Now, what's the downers? The downers of this. I really wish Blizz would label integral story parts of quests, integral story quests as story quest. This is your main quest line, and the rest of the stuff is offshoot stuff. Because this is going to create a certain amount of RNG amongst players. Now, you can work out which quests are the story ones because they'll involve a major lore character. So if you read through the quest and it's like, oh, go meet Velen, for example, although it's not usually that obvious, that's obviously your main story quest. That's the way you need to go. This zone follows a questing pattern very similar to Mists of Pandaria, whereas Frostfire Ridge is very much sort of Wrath of the Lich King TBC. Not as many quest hubs, but those quest hubs contain many more quests. Shadowmoon Valley, however, goes more Mists of Pandaria-ish with many quest hubs that contain 1 or 2 quests. And some of those quests are, in fact, oh, hi, nice to meet you, go meet this guy somewhere else. And it can be a little bit frustrating. The Alliance story quest, as I said earlier, is absolutely amazing and fantastic and the best aspect so far. It absolutely craps on the Horde one. However, the Horde story quest line is something you have to do before you unlock everything else. Not so with the Alliance. With the Alliance, you're going to get sort of 3 or 4 quests at exactly the same time to visit different places. One of them is your story mode, and the other 3 actually take you off on a series of very mundane questing. Very mundane, very boring, very much go and collect this, go and do this. The old usual stuff we decide to see. Occasionally a mini defend this or something that could be cool but doesn't quite pan out. You're looking for traitors and things like that. That's kind of okay, but then it doesn't really explode at the end. It's a little bit of a premature ejaculation. The main story is great. All the other stuff is a little bit frustrating. That's where I got a little bit annoyed, is that I was like, go and meet this guy. And I got there and he's like, hi, nice to meet you. Go and meet the other guy. Oh, come on. Go into the mine and collect 8 thingies. Amazing. Which then brings us on to, why are these quests mundane? Well, Shadowmoon Valley is essentially, for those of you who played the Burning Crusade, Zangarmarsh. It is almost entirely Zangarmarsh, and I'm not joking. They reuse, essentially, almost to the point of ripping quests from TBC and sticking them into Shadowmoon Valley. It came across, I've got to say, as really lazy. Really, really lazy. So those of you who did do Zangarmarsh and didn't skip it for whatever reason if you joined the game later, if you did Zangarmarsh properly, you'll remember quests like, we need some ingredients for plant life, and we need some stinger tails, and you need to find these ingredients for this recipe because I have to make some kind of brew. I'm not joking when I say that quest was repeated 2 or 3 times in different areas. I did one quest where I was supposed to go and do stingers and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I get this, right? Go and do this little mushroom area. It is parts of Zangarmarsh do exist within Shadowmoon Valley. Umbrafen in particular is there. And then you went to a different area, which was also very similar to Zangarmarsh, and it gave me almost exactly the same quest again. And I was like, I just did this. This is only one zone. I basically did this exact same quest not 20 minutes ago. And you're giving it to me again already. And that kind of sucks. That really does kind of suck. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. You seem to have quite literally lifted areas of TBC and just stuck them into this zone and said, that's your side quest stuff. And it feels extremely repetitive for those of us who did play the Burning Crusade. If you didn't play the Burning Crusade, though, you're probably going to be okay. If you just skipped through it or you power leveled through it or whatever you did, you're going to be alright. Because it's actually kind of cool the first time. For those of you who've done it before, you're going to be like, ah, come on. I'm going to do something something a little bit different. It's also worth mentioning, for those of you who played Wrath of the Lich King, is that if you remember the papaya and banana quest to get your brew, I forget the name of the brew now, it used to make you drunk, the little, I remember the icon. Where you throw the things in the barrels, that quest exactly makes a return. Yeah, I wasn't sure when I did it. I was like, really? Did somebody feel like we didn't like celebrate it enough the first time that we needed to put this quest back into the game and do the exact same thing again. And this is obviously not something that's like a placeholder, because you've had to build the entire area where we do the same thing with throwing the fruit and whatever in the barrels. And doing that again, I was like, it's not quite... Some quests being done again, kind of cool. Like Nesting Way Safari, that's alright. That's alright. It's a big quest. It takes us out into the zone. It's a quest that you can clearly see when you see you have to kill 40 or 50 mobs, that you're not supposed to just go to a little area and just do it over and over. You're supposed to be doing that quest as you progress through the zone. Yeah, okay. Get to see Nesting Way again. That's alright. Kind of get it. Throwing in the barrels and stuff and killing the stingers again, they don't really deserve a repeat. And let's be honest now, that's not something to be overly excited about. It certainly didn't excite me. Some of you might be like, oh, cool, I liked that quest. That was a lot of fun, throwing the things in the barrel. I was just thinking, again, it just feels a little bit on the lazy side. It really does. So other than that, pretty good on the questing. The questing was okay. I really wish, though, they would tell us which are the main story quests, because RNG could be a badass here. It's one of those moments where somebody has a great experience and somebody doesn't. I was on the unfortunate end of not having a great experience, usually because when I quest, I check my map and see where's the closest place to go. By doing that, I didn't end up actually doing the full story quest until the end of the zone, which meant I did all the side quests first and started to get really sort of bogged down in the drudgery of the zone of doing the mundane side stuff, which we're kind of used to, which is fine when it's mixed alongside the story mode. But what ultimately happened, of course, is that I ended up doing everything else but the story mode. And then I got into the real good stuff and was like, oh, bastard. This stuff's really, really fucking good, and I'm missing out on it. What a fucking bummer. What a fucking bummer. So that was the end of that. Ultimately, how does the zone feel in comparison to Frostfire Ridge? It's slower. There's no doubt about that. It's definitely slower. It's far more pretty if you're into that kind of thing. If that is really something you're interested in, is being around pretty zones, and you want your first Mists of Pandaria, first Walls of Draenor experience to be quite a nice aesthetic one, besides the initial scenario. I will say that as an opener, it's not as strong. It's certainly not as strong as Frostfire Ridge. We talked about this in the Frostfire video, is that you start off with this super kick-ass quest with Thrall and Durotan. Now, the Alliance quest is better, but due to that diversion, you might not end up following that wonderful quest line until later in the game. So when you do launch, guys, and you haven't got the experience, if the zone remains relatively similar, I would really encourage you to pay attention to who you're dealing with on your quests, because there's a lot of lore characters. If you see a major name, mix it into your normal questing, you're going to have a better time in this zone than I did, because it's well worth the experience. Well worth the experience. I hope that enlightens you a little bit. Look forward to it. Bye, guys.